Hello, happy Saturday, everyone. How was your weekend? All right, I hope that we are all doing well. So, before I start, please find your comfortable seat and make sure that your audio is clear so that you can hear my discussion for today. Before anything else, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Florence Gaze, B. Sagittarius of Finnish Education in the same university, the UM Tagum College, way back 5 years ago. I am an HR practitioner for almost 5 years already. And right now, I'm currently connected in Rose Pharmacy, handling the entire branches of South Mindanao as an HR. All right. So what I'm going to discuss with you right now is basically based on book because of course I have to recap and to refresh everything that I learned way back 5 years ago because I totally forgot about it. Some of it is based on personal experience and most of it is based on my profession. All right. So my topic for today is industrial relation, labor union, and labor movements. So does everyone already have an idea on this? All right. So for those who have not, let me show you some pictures. So through pictures, I know that you can gather a little bit idea on what we're going to discuss right now. All right. So there it goes. So on the first picture, the first two pictures in the upper portion shows that there is a happy, there is a smile on their faces. So I assume that employees are happy. So there is a happy relationship between workers and the management. So it's somewhat so called as a industrial relation. So the two pictures in the center portion talks about the KMU and the TUCP. So I know that you saw this in some news and even on the internet. So the KMU stands for the Kilusang Mayu Uno. The TUCP stands also for the Trade Unions Congress in the Philippines, and the ALU is the Associated Labor Unions. So it's somewhat so called as a labor union. So as you can see there, these are workers who form a union in which the KMU and the TUCP is their federation. So the workers who form an organization, it's somewhat so called as a labor union. And the last two picture in the lower portion, regular na trabaho, hindi endo, violation of workers' basic rights, and of contractualization. So as you can see, these are workers who form a strike. So that is so called as a labor movements. All right, so did you get a little bit idea on what we are going to discuss right now? All right. So what is it all about? So actually, industrial relation has a bigger scope. So the assigned topic that we had, or the report that you're going to report as time goes by, is actually all of that. All of this, the practice of managing unionized employment situation, industrial relation, labor unions and labor movements, labor history and labor law, union organizing, bargaining, contract administration, labor and labor standards, and social legislation, important contemporary topics is actually all of that is interconnection or have connected with the industrial relations. What I'm going to discuss right now is industrial relation, the labor union, and labor movements. So first is, let me define you what is industrial relation. So for the word itself, the industry and the relation. So it means to say the industry means any productive activity in which the individual is engaged. So like for example, a doctor is engaged in a hospital setting. A teacher is engaged in a school setting. An HR is also engaged in a corporate company, or even an engineer is engaged into a construction firm, or if ever you are also a service crew. So some of the service crew is engaged in a fast food chain like McDonald's Philippines Corporation or the Jollibee. So it refers to the company where you are working for. So that is so called as the industry or the company. And the relation simply means that it is the relation that exists in the industry between employer and his workforce. So the employer-employee relationship and the employee and employer relationship. All right. So industrial relation or the employee relation refers to a relationship between employers and employees. or it refers to the relation between management and workers in the company. So as simple as that. All right. But on the other hand, if you work in the company, it is not called as a industrial relation, but it's so called as an employee relation. So saan po makikita yung employee relation? Employee relation is found in an HR department. So if you are in the HR department, no, you are handling the most crucial task of being an HR, because HR has different field. You can be in the recruitment, the training and development, the payroll, no, the benefits. So you can handle of that. But the crucial for me, the very challenging role of being an HR, if ever you will be assigned in the employee relation. Why? Because in the employee relation, it is where, yun nga, kumbaga, yun yung sabi nila, you are the sumbungan ng bayan. No? Bakit kasumbungan ng bayan? Because if ever there is a dispute between management or the manager or the workers, so of course, pupunta sila lahat sa HR. Magrereklamo doon si manager because ganito yung subordinate niya. Magrereklamo naman doon si subordinate because ganito daw yung manager niya. No? Or you are also somewhat called an official psychologist or a lawyer or attorney, because in gathering the facts, or like for example, if you have an IR which leads to termination, of course, you have to gather facts, you have to gather evidences, make sure that the evidence is really clear, because you have to terminate that employee. So hindi pwede na dapat papetiks-petiks lang pagdating sa reasoning. So of course, you have to establish the just causes of terminating an employee, no? And sometimes it's some called as a guidance center, because nga if there is a dispute, like for example, no, ipapatawag ni manager itong empleyadong itong subordinate niya because meron siyang nilabag na nakaka-hurt maybe sa feelings niya. So medyo ipapatawag na naman si HR, no, kung anong dapat gawin, and then the HR would just hear other side of the story, no? The HR would hear the manager's side and the manager or the employee side also. All right? So that is. So in establishing, so before you will terminate an employee, so this is the crucial part of being an HR, no? The handling the employee relation. So before we would terminate an employee, so let me share you the due process that we had, no? So the first one is the IR. The IR must be submitted to the HR. So what is an IR? It is the incident report. So like for example, if the manager caught something from their subordinates or from his employee, no, like for example, nagnakaw, there's a theft. So the manager should prepare an incident report. Incident report, so the incident report, it states there kailan siya nangyari, anong mga kinuha niya, if ever that's a theft, no, kailan siya naganap, anong oras. So it established all the facts, all the details was written there. So after in the creation of IR, it will be submitted to the HR. So the HR will now assess, will now evaluate and review what will be the specific sanction of that before the HR would create the NT or the notice to explain. So after establishing the facts, after analyzing and reviewing everything, and after identifying the sanction that will be given or kung ano man yung law na na-violate niya in accordance with the company policy, so the HR right now will prepare the notice to explain. So the notice to explain, yung nakalagay po dyan is actually a legend pa lang siya. So hindi pa siya napatunayan. So by the form of notice to explain, it gives the employee the right to explain himself against the alleged, for example, if nagnakaw, against the alleged theft. No? So within 5 calendar days, according to labor law, the employee is only given within 5 calendar days to submit his written explanation to the HR. So after the receive of the NTE within 5 calendar days, again, within 5 calendar days po yan, so the employee would submit on or before the 5 days, no? The explanation. So he has to explain everything kung bakit nangyari ito, kung bakit niya nagawa, no? If there is admission or if there is not, kung bakit siya nagnakaw, kung bakit hindi, bakit siya na late, bakit hindi. So it established everything there in the explanation. So, if the employee, so like for example, ma'am, paano pag hindi siya nag-submit ng written explanation, no, within 5 calendar days? So, hindi na po siya hihintayin, but the HR would proceed right now into the notice of administrative hearing, no? So, through the administrative hearing, it is a face-to-face hearing, or it is a face-to-face conference that it has or must be established, no? It is a set of question and answer portion. So, the employee, no, the employee could somehow bring his attorney or could somehow bring his union officer to be there for him, no, to support him in the allegation that was given to her. And also the manager, the management should always be supported with the CEO of the company, pwede din silang sumali, the manager or the superiors from the company, no, they are the representation of the management side. And the HR is, ang gagawin ng HR, siya yung parang panel of judges or siya yung judge, no? So, nasa gitna lang po talaga siya dapat. So, the HR must hear the side of the story of the employee, no? Kung sino man yung nakalabag ng batas, and then the employer. So, through the notice, through the administrative hearing, through the series of questions, it established everything. No? So doon po siya mas makikita is ano ba talagang nangyari, kung totoo ba or hindi. And sometimes during the administrative hearing, there is already an admission on the respondent. So through that, if it established, if during the administrative hearing, there's already an admission, so it is madali na lang on the part of the HR to terminate the employee because it already established everything. And during the administrative hearing, actually, it was recorded. So we will ask first the admission of the employee if the conversation, if throughout the conversation, if it's okay to her that the hearing will be recorded or not. But through this, because there's a lot of panel there, no? So dito dyan na to mahibalaan if the employee really, no, do something wrong, which is not, or he abide in the company policy. And after the notice of admin hearing, after a series of investigation, no, conducted through the facts presented during the hearing, the evidence presented during the hearing, so the HR will now proceed into the notice of disciplinary action or the notice of decision from the company. So the HR will not be the one to decide for that. There are some attorneys in the company that they have also to review what is the prepared, the notice of disciplinary action or the notice of decision that was prepared by the HR. So it must be reviewed also by the legal of the company. So it is where, so ito na po yung final justice. So in the NDA, it will be stipulated there if you will be given a warning or the suspension or even termination. So that is the sample of the due process that we have. All right. So next, so who is the founder of this industrial relation? So who created this industrial relation? So actually, there's no other than Mr. John R. Commons, who founded the industrial relations and created the first academic industrial relations program at the University of Wisconsin in 1920s. So he is an expert who studied the needs of worker and identify the common problem of the worker. So actually, he is a workers economist, no? Who study about the industrial relations or even who founded the industrial relations. So as time goes by, during the, there is an industrial revolutions, so it created, no, a free labor market. So as time goes by, dumarami na po yung employers, dumarami na po yung employee who work in a free labor market. So what is a free labor market? So a free labor market, it is a market which is the government cannot interfere. Like for example, if I am an employer in a free labor market, so I only provide the below minimum wage on my workers. So the employee, because there is no interference from the government, so it's okay, no? Or like for example, in the free labor markets, I'll give you my service, but you exchange it, I'll give you my service, then you exchange it with food. I'll give you my service, then you exchange it with clothing. I'll give you my service and you exchange it with material so that I can build my shelter. So it is a form of exchange relationship, no? But there is no guidelines or there is no provisions that can protect the rights of the workers because that's free. Labor markets, free nga siya. From the word itself, free. So the employer can just give below minimum wage. The employer can somehow instruct their workers to work beyond 8 hours. So yun yung mga nangyayari sa free labor markets. As a society wrestled in these massive economic and social changes, labor problems arose. So ito na po yung mga nangyayari, no? The low wages, of course, maliit yung sahod. So these are some of the problems that they see on the free labor markets. The long working hours, the dangerous works. So of course, right now, according to RA 1158 of the Occupational Safety and Health, the employee has the right to refuse if he feels or if he sees that the work is unsafe to her. Right? The abusive supervisory practices. So there are some companies right now, for example, yung mga not unionized company, and then example, pag-utusan nila yung employee nila, okay, you have to work for this even though they know that that is wrong. So of course, they have to follow because boss nyo nila. So kailangan pa din sundin even though they are wrong, even though alam nila sa sarili nila na mali yung pinag-uutos nila, no? Abusive supervisory practices, violent strikes, and even threat of social instability. So of course, merong magaganap na strike because there is unfair labor practice. So merong strike na nagaganap outside in the company and the threat of social instability. So for example, if someone saw you attending the strike and then your employer would just say that, okay, tomorrow will be your last day. I saw you attending strike. So there is a threat, no? If ever they will join the strike, then tomorrow they don't have any job because they're already terminated. So somewhat like that. All right. And then because of the rapid increase in the membership of trade unions, so it foster into the establishing a university, a different university, because there is a massive membership in the trade unions because nakitaan nila ng potential na okay, maganda pala magpa-member, no? Kung ikaw isang member ng isang union, no, you have the right against all the right practices in labor because there's a lot of members no magpa-member. So of course, there is also a lot of universities na na-establish. So the first university is the Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relation, was actually founded in 1945. So this university talks about all the matters pertaining into labor and industrial relations. So actually, the author of Industrial Relations was, again, John R. Commons. Actually, he came from the United States. So the first country talaga who created or who founded the industrial relations is the United States. So the US created a new deal of legislation. It's so called as a National Labor Relations Commission in the Fair Labor Standards Act. So this is the two legislations that actually created by the United States. So it is the United States, the first country who adopted or who created even the industrial relations. So the NLRC, and right now even the NLRC is here in the Philippines, and the Fair Labor Standards Act. So the NLRC, it is a quasi-judicial agency attached to the Department of Labor if Employment, is mandated to educate labor and management dispute involving both local and overseas workers through compulsory arbitration and alternative modes dispute of resolution. While on the other hand, the Fair Labor Standard Act, it is a law that creates the right to minimum wage, the time and a half overtime pay when people work over 40 hours a week. It so prohibits employment of minors in oppressive child labor. But here in the Philippines, actually, we don't have any labor standard act because sa atin, no, it's the Labor Code of the Philippines. It is a law governing employment practices and labor relations. So actually, it was enacted by Mr. Ferdinand Marcos way back 1974. So Labor Code of the Philippines po ang nandito sa Philippines, hindi po siya Fair Labor Standard Act. But actually, the advocacy is just the same. The purpose and the reason behind that creation is actually just the same. And then, so what is the difference right now between the DOLE, no? As you can see there, a quasi-judicial agency attached to the Department of Labor. Now, what do you think is the difference between Department of Labor or DOLE or the NLRC? So, on my research, actually, DOLE is a government agency in which they are mandated to formulate policies on the labor or the laborers or the workers of the company. So all workers of the company is protected through this agency, the Department of Labor and Employment. While the NLRC, it is a government agency also in which if there is a dispute that cannot be settled through Department of Labor, then pwede na po siyang umakyat sa NLRC. So like for example, if there is a concern or if there is a complaint sa DOLE, no, against employer and employee relationship, no, merong complaint sa employee, hindi siya kayang na-settle ng DOLE and Department of Labor. So they can somehow raise the concern, no, or the dispute through the NLRC. So the difference between actually the two is that actually on the other hand, if you have some complaint with the company, if you're still connected in the company you're working for, so actually government employee doesn't have a DOLE, no? So if you are workers in the government, hindi ka po pwede mag-complain sa DOLE because DOLE, I think, no, it is for private employee. I'm not sure if I'm mistaken, no, but actually that's my observation. So if you are presently connected right now in the company, so you can file your complaint in DOLE. But if you are not connected anymore in the company and you have some complaint in the company, like for example, the separation pay because it wasn't not released already, so some of it will be filed through the NLRC. So if forward ka po ni DOLE, papuntang NLRC. No? Or like for example, no, if there is and you saw your boss outside and there is sexual harassment, no, and then pwede kang mag-file ng case sa boss mo because boss mo siya before. So technically, hindi ka na pwede dapat mag-file because you are not already employed in the company. But on the other hand, the NLRC also can settle that because you are outside of the employment in the company. So whatever the complaint, if ever you are not connected anymore, NLRC po siya. If ever you're still connected in the company, DOLE po siya. So that's it. That is also the difference between the two. All right, next. So on the other hand, industrial relation talks about the four functions: the employee, which is represented by the union, the employer, which is represented by the management, the government, which is represented by NLRC or the DOLE, and the trade unions. So it is yun yung mga federations, no? The KMU, the ALU-TUCP, so the sample that I give you recently. All right, so on the other hand, according to T.N. Kapoor, industrial relations should be understood in the sense of labor management relation into a wider state of relationship touching extensively all aspects of labor such as union policies that is specified into the CBA, the labor unions, personal policies about the rules and regulations of the company, the wages, social welfare and social security, service conditions, supervision and communication, governmental actions on labor matter. All right? So what is it all about? So ito. So this is the sample, or these are the sample of active union right now here in the Philippines. It's the Federation of Free Workers. So actually, I just chose 3, no? So these are the active union in the Philippines right now. The Federation of Free Workers, the Associated Labor Unions, and the KMU, the Kilusang Mayu Uno. So these are the federation in the Philippines right now. So what is it all about? So actually, Labor union, as I said a while ago, labor union is an organization formed by workers in a particular trade, industry, or company for the purpose of improving, of course, the pay, the benefits, and the working conditions. So it means to say, no, workers, or it can be any workers who form an organization is somewhat so-called is a, pwede po silang matawag na union. So pwede kang doctor, engineer, any workers, basta mag-form sila ng union, ang tawag po sa kanila is labor union. So the labor union, they will have to associate into federation para mas malakas yung ano nila, yung title, or mas malakas yung power nila, no? So they must have to register, to go there to different federations that you want. So for the purpose of improving pay, because no, during my past interview with my applicant, I know that there's a lot of companies right now, no, even if they work already for longer years of the company, until now, they don't have any increase, no? So the purpose during the CBA, isa talaga yan sa pag-uusapan. The main no, na pag-uusapan talaga nila will be the increase or the pay, the benefits and the working conditions are officially known as the labor organization and so-called as a trade union or the workers union. So the labor union negotiate with employers. The union selects representative to a bargaining results into collective bargaining that stipulates the working conditions for a period of time. So it means to say, as I said a while ago, the union is a group of workers. So through the workers, like for example, there is a 5,000 workers. So they have to select officers. So ang tawag po sa kanila is union officers or the representative or the union officers. So during the CBA or during the preparation of the CBA, so the union officers, the federation, and the management will attend during in the preparation of the collective bargaining agreement. Bargaining po siya, no? And then the management is represented by the employers through a CBA. So gagawa po sila ng CBA. So isa siyang policy which is independent siya from the policy of the company because the company has its own policy. But on the CBA, it is different policy that it has, no? Which is, it states there the benefits, no, the pay, working conditions, the pay, and all other benefit which is stated there, which is not stated in the basic basic policy of the company, no. So actually, on my perspective, actually union is still a business. Because right now in our company, actually our company has a union. It's the Associated Labor Unions. So why I can say that that is a business? Because every month we pay every month for ranging into 50 to 60,000 per month for the union dues. And then during the CBA, they have to ask everything. Like for example, the health fund, the workers' educational fund, the productivity program fund, the environmental fund. So they have to ask everything during the CBA, all about the fund. So sino po yung mag-provide ng money noon? So of course, it's the company. It's the union. So for example, they will conduct training for our workers. So of course, training is very expensive. But on the other hand, it is not the federation who will pay for the training fee, who will allocate budget for the training, but it is still the company who will provide or who will pay for the training, no? So on the other hand, para mabuo po yung or para mag-sustain yung federation or yung union is through a form of union dues because every month the employee is deducted through salary deduction. So in our company, it's 100 per month. So medyo malaki-laki siya. So basically, if malaki yung company nyo, malaki din yung ibabayad natin sa federation. So still, it is a business, no? But on the other hand, the purpose of this business, the purpose of this federation is to protect the rights of the worker. And as you can see there, okay, so it will be, so whatever the stipulation stated. So during the, let me share with you that during the CBA, no, ang first talaga niyan will be the union who will identify kung ano yung mga gusto niya, or hingin niya sa company. Okay? Hingin pala. Hindi siya, yeah, technically gusto or hingin. So ano yung hihingin niya sa company? So like for example, gusto niya ng mga ganito, ganyan, na benefits. So like for example, when it talks about the increase, no? Example, the union will ask for a 50% increase on the daily wage. So it's the, for example, the minimum wage right now is 396 per day. And then the union will ask for 50% increase per year, no? So during the bargaining, so again, at the end of it, it is still the management who will decide if kaya ba niyang i-provide yung hinihingi ng union or hindi. Or they should meet halfway. So for example, 50% yung hinihingi ng union. So si management, iisipin niya yon, no? Kung kaya ba niyang i-provide yung 50% increase or yung 10% increase lang or 20% lang yung kaya i-provide. So during that agreement or during that negotiation, so whatever the negotiation, like for example, 50 yung hiningi, yung kaya ibigay lang ng company is only 30% or 20% from the daily rate. So isusulat po siya lahat sa CBA. Or like for example, the uniform. So actually, for example, they ask for a set of uniform for at least 4. And then yung kaya i-provide lang ng company is 2 sets of uniform per year. So what is stated or what is agreed during the negotiation, it will be stated all, everything on the CBA, on the collective bargaining agreement. All right, so this is the sample of the CBA signing. All right, so the labor movements. So if you belong to a union, participate in strike, or advocate for raising the minimum wage, you're involved in a labor movement. So this is the sample actually. Okay, so this is a form of labor unions, regular na trabaho. So as you can see here, the SUBIFRU. So actually, this is based just on Google. So contractual, going regular, Mondenisen Company, regularization also. So some sorts of it is actually they strike because they want regular job. But as you can see here in the industry that we have right now, no, or in some company, you can still see workers who work in a contractual basis. So most of it is actually workers in mall. Yung mga cashier, sales lady, yung mga attendant nila dyan is basically some of them, and most of them is actually under agency. And they are not being regularized until now. No? So maybe there's a purpose or there's a reason behind that. Maybe because if hindi regular lahat na employee, of course the company will save, no? By means of, like for example, if they have separation pay, so pwede silang makasave sa ganyang bagay. Okay? So that's why most of the workers, for example, in mall, most of them is actually on contract basis. So if ever I like your performance, you can be renewed. So all you have to do is just to sign a contract through the agency that your contract is being renewed. But actually in labor law, 6 months, after 6 months, you'll be considered as a regular employee or regular worker in the company. But I don't know in other company where you're still practicing the contractualization. And union boosting. So ano po yung union boosting? So it is yung parang tinatakot nila. Like for example, if you attend, like for example, if someone or if your employer watches you that you attended or you participated in a labor union, then pinagbabawalan ka nila. So it is a no. No. So there are some companies like that. If ever they saw you that you are participating, no, in the union, then you'll be shocked because tomorrow your grounds for termination. No, again, as stipulated in the ILO Convention 87, the freedom of association, so we have that, and the ILO Convention 98, the right to CBA. So hindi po natin pwedeng pigilan ng isang union members or isang workers na mag-form ng isang union. All right, so the objective actually is to safeguard interest between management and workers, to increase productivity, to reduce dispute, to prevent strike, lockout, and protest, and to avoid unnecessary interference with the government, and to foster industrial peace. So of course, if the objective talaga of industrial relation is to safeguard interest between management of workers. So there are some different between management prerogative and the rights also of workers. To increase productivity, because if there is harmonious relationship towards your manager, there's a harmonious relationship towards your workmate. So of course, ganahan sila mag-work. There is a passion, there is a motivation. So it reduces absenteeism, it reduces late. So if there is no absence, so of course it increases productivity. It reduces dispute because they can settle whatever the complaint that they have. So they can settle issues in their own because they understand each other. They prevent lockouts, protest, strike, and lockout. So of course, maiiwasan po yung ganito because in the company, they already have an harmonious relationship towards each other to avoid unnecessary interference with the government. So of course, maiiwasan na po yung complaints sa DOLE and NRRC because the management and the workers can settle issues in their own and to foster industrial peace. So it is really important, or it is really, no, it can boost somehow the confidence of the worker if she know that every morning she wakes up in the morning and they feel like there's energy because they love the working environment, no? So there is peace inside the company he is working for. So there is prosperity, and if there is prosperity, there's a high level of mutual understanding and goodwill to each other. All right. So let me share to you some sort of issues and concern that we are going to share with you right now. All right. So in the issues and concern, I must define the statement of the problem, the point of view, areas of consideration, course of action, recommendation, and action plan. So for example, let me share with you CRs of work. So example, the long hours of work. Sales officer from XYZ company is required to work beyond 8 hours, 12 to 14 hours a day without overtime pay. So in order to achieve sales target, so this is the statement of the problem. So like for example, no, one of the problem that being raised in the industrial relation is yon, the hours of work. So example, ito yung problem. No, the sales officer is required to work beyond 8 hours because he must achieve the sales target. So on the manager's perspective, to ensure collection of sales from the creditor. So yung perspective ko lang is that you have to collect all the credit, all the loans, all the debt of the creditor. But on the employer's perspective, iba po yung perspective niya sa manager's perspective. So yung perspective niya to consume sales collection at the end of the day, compromising the hours of work rendered in order to achieve sales target. So I don't care how many hours I work as long as I would achieve my sales target. So the areas of consideration, the management should look into the plan of action that they must be done in order to eliminate long working hours. So my alternative course is action, establish guidelines on accomplishing high sales collection without compromising work. So they have to identify, they have to plan, they have to create new set of strategies for them to not to compromise, no, the work hours. Because in some company, no, there are some company who also want, no, same lang sila, they have to achieve sales target, but this company, no, this sales officer is only required to work 8 hours and still, no, kaya pa din niyang i-achieve yung sales target niya. But this company, no, same lang sila, no, same lang sila ng purpose. But then again, this company ma-achieve na yung sales target niya, but of course, they have to work beyond 8 hours. So what's the difference between the two? What's maybe it's the strategies behind. So my recommendation is, of course, there must be an additional overtime pay must be given, additional hire of sales officers. So they have, maybe because kulang yung tao, kaya nag-overtime, no? Kaya nag-exceed ng 8 hours a day yung work nila. And of course, change of collection patterns and strategies, and establish work-life balance system. And the plan of action, it must be done ASAP because according to Labor Code of the Philippines, Book 3, Article 83, normal hours of work, the normal hours of work of any employee shall not exceed into 8 hours. No? So beyond 8 hours, there must be an additional overtime pay. Right? And the last sample that I have is the wage issue. So the below minimum wage. So like for example, the statement of problem, a newly hired employee from a beauty marketing company was offered for a below salary as her starting salary. So no payslip given and even no contract that was given to her, to him or to her. So the point of view, the manager's perspective is to get the employee for the position in order to fill in the vacant position para may magtrabaho sa trabaho na yon. But on the employer's perspective, wala na job. So even though there are some employees that even though they know that maliit naman yung sahod, below minimum wage naman, but gusto ko ng trabaho, so kahit na below minimum, still gagawin ko pa din yon. Still okay pa rin sa akin yon. So the areas of consideration, the management should provide enough income to its workers in order for them to afford the living wage. So of course, that is really important that you have to provide the minimum wage, no, to your workers because it was already studied that the minimum wage, no, meron siyang set of guidelines. Bakit ganun yung amount ng minimum wage? So my recommendation is to follow the minimum basic wage, provide newly hired workers, or provide minimum wage even though you are a probationary, regular, or contractual, and adhere to the mandated wage as required by the labor law, including the basic benefits. So the plan of action, it must be done ASAP, must provide contract to the newly hired workers, including the job offer and the benefit package, must provide payslip every payroll. So through this, because there are some companies very wise, they don't provide payslip, they don't provide even contract. Para if ever magreklamo si employee doon sa DOLE, wala siyang may pakita na any documents na ganun po yung na-receive niya na below minimum wage. So that if ever magkareklamo doon sa DOLE, then the employer can just deny the fact na hindi ko po siya pinagsisweldo ng below minimum wage. So that's the purpose maybe of not providing payslip or even contract. Because the Region 11, the Davao region approved through the National Wages and Productivity Commission the minimum wage of 396 daily effective February 16, 2019. So that is actually the minimum basic right now here in Davao region. All right. So the main purpose of labor union is actually to protect the rights and interests of workers, to ensure fair wages. This is the basic, no? Don't forget about this, to ensure fair wages, to provide safe working conditions, to provide reasonable work schedules for union workers in the specific areas of work. All right, so I think that's all. Do you have any questions? So thank you so much for listening. Have a nice day.